think as we get older, we forget that passion sometimes. It's the thing that will cause you to spend longer working on a particular topic. Time will fly. You will have a good time. You'll meet like-minded people and have meaningful conversations with them and build a community around that.
Hello and welcome back to the Stepping Bricks YouTube channel. Now today I have a special guest to my heart, especially because you to Professor Richard Wiseman. Just a quick introduction about Professor Richard Wiseman, who is a professor of the public understanding of psychology at the University of Hertfordshire, and is known for several things. We're going to chat a little bit about some of these things. Particularly, he wrote several psychology books. They're a bit unconventional, not the typical psychology book that you would expect. And I have a few with me here today, which we're going to talk about. So we have 59 seconds and Did You Spot the Gorilla, which is a fantastic experiment as well. And this one is the book that changed completely my thinking about luck now. Now, Richard, welcome to this interview.
Pleasure.
You had quite an unconventional path, let's say a career path. So you are a magician, a psychologist, author, YouTuber. So how are these things overlapping and influence each other?
Oh, massively. So I started off when I was about 8 years old, really being interested in magic and magicians because my grandfather showed me a wonderful magic trick. And so I got into magic and then realized that magicians are really quite good psychologists because, well, first of all, at one very basic level, they have to fool people, get them to look in one place when, the trick's going on somewhere else. But second, from a sort of social psychological perspective, you have to like magicians, even though they're essentially deceiving you. And third, and actually, I think this is the most important thing of all, magic is a very, very small community full of very passionate people who are standing on the shoulders of the previous generations and try to create, some sort of understanding of magic to pass on to future generations. And so all those things came together and I became interested in psychology. So I went to University College London, did a degree in psychology, did some street entertaining there at the same time. And then was looking for a PhD. And a friend of mine had seen a poster that said, if you're interested in the paranormal and psychology, then come to the University of Edinburgh. And that was a guy called Professor Robert Morris, who was advertising for a position to look at psychics and other sorts of paranormal phenomena. And so I came to Edinburgh for 4 years. And then after that, went to University of Hertfordshire, where I'm now a professor of psychology. But yeah, the route through was really from magic through to psychology. And my interest and what's behind some of the books you're talking about there is really psychology in everyday life. Often our common sense ideas of what will make us happy, for example, are completely wrong. And so we'll chase money and we'll go, oh, money will help us be happy. Absolutely doesn't. It's a terrible, terrible goal. And so understanding what really does make us happy and lead to sort of meaningful, fulfilling lives has been one of the kind of main thrusts for these sorts of books.
That's good. Talking about magic, we met recently at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and I, I had to say that you lowered the expectations of the audience down to zero because the title of the show, I mean, it was the world's most boring card magic trick, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
So realistically, you wouldn't expect anybody to be like super excited about the best of the best of the best. So you know already that you're there for a reason. And I don't know if you were surprised, but the room was full. We had about 100 people in the room. It was packed with people interested in the most boring trick. And he brilliantly delivered that 45 minutes, an hour of the show with the total opposite of what you would expect. The more it went, it went on, the more I was like, this is great. This is great. So it was the opposite of boring. Now, how did you come up with that idea?
Oh, the same way I come up with most ideas, which is you look at what everyone else is doing and do the opposite. So at the Edinburgh Fringe, everyone was trying to tell you their shows were exciting and exhilarating and get people in and retain them. So I just wondered what would happen if you said to people, this is going to be really boring. And the answer was that lots of people turned up for it and they wouldn't leave. I mean, I kept urging them to leave throughout the show. And there are some genuinely boring moments in that show, but actually, I think people just like things that were different. And also, I think it speaks to a wider theme in that we strive to eliminate boredom at the moment. The moment we get bored, we're on our phones or on the computer or whatever it is. And actually, boredom is a really interesting emotion. If you're going to achieve anything in life, being able to be bored, to actually sustain through the difficult times, to be resilient, if you like, is very important. And sometimes boredom tells us you need to find something more meaningful to do with your life. I always think that boredom is a bit like hunger. It's a basic drive. And if as soon as you get hungry, you just put fast food into you, you're probably not going to end up very healthy. And that's what a lot of these very short video clips are doing to us. They're like fast food. And so the show was exploring some of those themes and hopefully having a good time as well.
Did they give you some ideas for a new book by any chance?
No, I'm sort of done with books. I've done about
Right.
12 of them. And each time they involve sitting in a room on your own for about 4 to 6 months. And the kind of book landscape has changed. When I was doing a lot of those books, it's quite a few years ago now, there weren't many people doing psychology books. And now it's become this massive growth area, which is great at one level. And I think now trying to find something meaningful to say is much harder. But if I have an idea, then I'll do another book.
Yeah, thinking back of the show there, I think the audience didn't leave because there was a pride involved there. Because you said you can leave, and then it's like I'm not leaving. I'm going to stay.
Yes, yes. And they become sunk costs because they've already put in 20 minutes and so on. I thought some people might leave, but they
Mhm.
absolutely didn't. So that was
Yeah,
was kind of quite nice.
that was good. So, talking 2 seconds about the luck factor, this book. Um, First of all, a little bit of background by myself. I've been started to become interested in psychology. I don't have a psychology background. I was a university lecturer in Stirling, but I was doing fish pathology, so something completely different,
Mm.
fish vet. But I've been starting to become interested in psychology when I was about 19 or 20 years old. I remember I was in Italy. In Italy, I was studying at a university that I didn't like. And then I said, if I didn't do a number of exams, I had to go to the military, to the army.
Mm.
At that time was mandatory. But I decided I didn't want to go to the army, so I decided to apply for the civil service. And I said, okay, I'll do it in the library of my university, which was like agriculture or something like that. But they didn't send me there. They sent me to the University of Psychology
Mm.
in Bologna University in the library. So now I was suddenly exposed to hundreds of books about human behavior. And I became so fascinated about studying the human behavior that I was particularly focusing on why, the difference between twin brothers or twin sisters, then they diverge over time to two different physical people, not just, behavior, but just they can change as well. Like one could be maybe overweight, the other one could be skinny. So they made different choices over the time. So I don't know if you cover anything of this, but do you think, because most people think like, okay, if they're genetically identical, they must have the same, end results, or if they're coming from the same parents, they should be exactly the same. I never seen siblings that are exactly the same. So to me, it's more like the environment. What is your take on that?
Well, I think anything psychological, it's personality or happiness, resilience, anything will have a genetic component, the same way that height does, or well-being, medical well-being, physical well-being. Um, to me, that's not the most interesting part of life because you can't change that very much. So even if it's only 20% is your environment, or 20% is the way you see the world, or the way in which your parents treat you, or whatever, that to me is a more interesting 20%. And that's where I've always kind of put my attention. And the fact that people can change and grow and develop to me gives me optimism about the future. The problem is that our common sense notions of what we need to do to be happy, for example, or to live a meaningful life are often completely wrong. And so we put our directions in the wrong way. You know, we kind of go, I need to do this, I need to do that. And so we don't understand how to maximize that 20, 30%, whatever it is. Now, in psychology, that's not a very popular view at the moment. Most psychologists would argue that it's genetics makes your brain, the brain makes you. I'm not very keen on brains. I much prefer to talk about the mind, which is, I'm assuming, related to the activity of the brain, but not the same thing. And I'd much rather look at people's potential rather than look at how their genetics guide them in a certain way. So yeah, that's always been my kind of thrust.
Okay. The so the book, The Luck Factor, basically, when I read it about 14 years ago, I was very superstitious. I mean, not extremely superstitious, but you know those kind of things they people say, no, I'm not superstitious, but if I can avoid it, then I would. Then you are superstitious.
Mm.
So you know, black cats and no spill the oil, don't break the mirror, don't pass underneath the ladder, and so on. All these things I try to avoid them until I came across this book. Now, everything changed because I was kind of locked into this hypothetical world of I don't do this because. Now, suddenly I was free. Now, I don't know if you realize the impact that you had on many, many people through this book alone, but the fact that I'm a science, you know, I'm a scientific person, and but still I was like kind of in between luck and non-luck. Reading the experiments in the book then made me realize, what am I doing? You know, that's just rubbish. Yeah, you create your own luck, but let's say the opportunities are there for everybody. It's just how you train your mind to spot them, right?
Yeah, the logbook came about. I mean, it's a long time ago now, so people ask me questions about it, and I actually don't remember very much about the book. It's
Mhm.
it's probably about 20 years old. So and there've been a lot more kind of up to date work since that book came out. But yeah, the idea was that you create your own luck by the way you're thinking and behaving, and the reason why we are superstitious is that often we like to try and get control in our lives. You know, the idea we know that lots of things in our lives are due to chance. And if we can touch wood or cross our fingers or whatever it is, we feel better. And there is some evidence that does actually then has an impact on you. It makes you less anxious. And there's some evidence that students who take their lucky mascot into an exam perform better, and golf people with their lucky putters and all of that. It's contentious. I mean, people have argued about those studies, but it is a very powerful idea. And I suppose it was trying to move people away from this notion that your life is controlled by these external forces, whether it's genetics or God or whatever it is, into a more sort of individualistic approach. And
Mhm.
there I was doing it with luck, and lots of the other books since then have done it with many, many other topics. But I'm very happy that it had an impact on your life all those years ago. My goodness.
Yeah, it's amazing. If you think like in Italy, um, okay, let me ask you this question. What's the unlucky number here in the UK or around the
Oh,
world?
well, seven would be the lucky, and 13 would be the unlucky.
Perfect. So in Italy, the lucky number is 13.
Ah, okay.
And the unlucky is 17. Now,
Right.
it's weird. So when you realize these things, this contrast between countries, then you think, oh, this is all rubbish. So the 13 comes from the fact that when you were going to play, you had to guess like 13 games, football games. And if you guessed 13, then you're a millionaire.
Okay.
So the 13 came from, and I remember through my childhood as well, the people used to gift in important events like a golden 13 like a bracelet or necklace or something because that is the brings you luck. And when when I went outside Italy, I was like, 13, are you crazy? I was like, okay, that doesn't make any sense anymore. So yes, thank you for that, for enlightening. Now if we just one more question about the luck. Do you think that people can really learn? Um, I mean, can they learn to be luckier inverted commas? And if so, what's the simplest habit that someone could adopt today to improve their chances?
Yeah, I mean, I think people can learn. I say it was many years ago, and so it's not an argument I've stuck with over the years.
Mm.
You know, to me, it would be awful if I was arguing the same as I was arguing 20 years ago.
Yes.
That to me would be a complete disaster.
Yeah.
I like it when things change over time, and that book is of its time.
Mhm.
I wouldn't argue now that people should really strive to be luckier in that way. I think I would argue that striving for a meaningful life is actually much, much better. And that's where the happiness research has gone as well. I'm sure when that book came out, we were doing the other happiness stuff was simply, yeah, how you make yourself happy. And now it's moved much more into what is a meaningful life. So I think I'd sidestep the question a little bit and say that was quite a long time ago.
Yeah, that's okay. So from your research, what's the most surprising discovery about human behavior that you made?
That our common sense is often wrong. So, and it's getting worse because of the kind of bad information out there on the internet. I mean, almost now every week, somebody writes to me about a study they've read about on AI, Chat GPT, that I didn't conduct, and yet it's attributed to me. I just had one in this morning about speed dating, and I haven't done the research, and there it all is written up as if I have done the research.
Mhm.
So, and that stuff's always been out there, but now it's getting worse. So I can remember when the Yale motivation study came out, this idea that kids, graduates, when they're just graduating about sort of 21 years old, you ask them, do you know what you want to be when you grow up? And the 3% that know what they wanted to be account for 90% of the income of the cohort 10 years later. Amazing study. You see it cited everywhere. For one of the books, I looked into it. Other people have looked into it as well. That study, as far as we can figure out, has never been conducted. It just isn't true that focusing that young, or indeed focusing at all, is a good thing to be doing. So I'm interested in the fact that we get so much wrong in everyday life, and often the fixes are really quick. But we do need to understand our common sense intuitions about what makes us happy are simply wrong a lot of the time. And I alluded to it, but a meaningful life is what actually I think people should be striving for. It's one where
Mhm.
you make a contribution to other people's lives, where you are kind to them, where what you're doing benefits other people. When you look at the people who are most content with their lives, that's what those people are doing. The other group, which are striving for income, are
Mhm.
always unhappy because they always realize they can earn more.
Yeah.
And it's all about them rather than other people. So those sorts of things I think have been the most surprising, where our feelings about a certain topic turn out to be completely wrong.
Yeah, so we touched a little bit on about the topic of money here, and I agree with that. The money shouldn't be the destination. Money should be the vehicle to take you to the destination. So
Mm.
I generally talk about this topic, and I always say if money is the goal, then you're in the wrong business
Mm.
because it can make you disappointed by the fact that you're chasing that goal because that goal can go up and down. But if you have a stronger goal, then money is needed as the vehicle to take you to that stronger goal. So it's a more like fulfilling life, if I may.
Yeah, I think so. I think contentment is kind of an interesting one. That tends to go with is what I'm doing, contributing to. Whenever I talk to anyone who's unhappy and they ask me for advice, it's always contribute to something which is bigger than you.
Mhm.
And that is why magic appeals to me so much. People don't realize there is a massive literature, some which sits behind me here, that magicians pass on this body of knowledge to one generation. They improve it and pass it on again. We're all contributing to something which is bigger than us, albeit in this tiny little weird world. And that I think is really important. So that's always my question is how are you contributing to something bigger than you, something in society, something in your local club, or whatever it is? And that way, people reorient themselves quite quickly. So I think actually in the show, I told the story of being, which is a true story, of being on supermarket checkout when I was 17, 18 years old. The most boring thing in the world. And the supermarket, just, in those days, it wasn't scanning, it was putting in the prices by hand. And then, my supervisor said to me, the contact you have with some of these people, because they're very lonely and isolated, will be the only contact they have with anyone throughout the entire day. Cheer them up, make them happy. You've made their lives happier. And that point, that boring, meaningless task suddenly had meaning. And I was reasonably good at cheering up people as they came through. And so that made for a much more content life just by a very simple little switch like that. So I always tell people, contribute something that's bigger than you. Go and help others. That's what lies behind a contented life. If you want an exciting life, then think of your life as a film. What would a character in a film do, and so on. But that's not the same as being content. And
Mhm.
so the happiness literature has switched away to contentment, I think, and is better for it.
Yeah, yeah, I love this concept. It's quite a nice topic to talk about. Now, we move to this other book. Oh, sorry, I don't know if you
Mm.
can see it.
59 seconds,
A
yes.
bit blurred, but it's 59 seconds. Here we go. Got it. Maybe the other books were blurred too, so I'll show that again. But 59 seconds. So the premise of this book is that small changes can create big results, right? So based on your experience, if you could recommend, for example, one 59-second tip that has the highest impact on, contentment, happiness, success, what would that be?
Um, I've got so many things in that book. I mean, just before I answer that, it came about because I met a CEO of a big company, a friend of mine, and she was deeply unhappy on a vast salary, but deeply unhappy. And she said, "What can I do to become happier?" And I started talking about it, and she said, "Well, I'm quite busy. Can you get a move on?" And I said, "How long have you got?" And she said, "Well, about a minute." And so that was the basis. The book I think was originally called 60 Seconds, but
Mhm.
59 was a much better title, and it's less than a minute as well. To answer your question, I would say a few things. One is develop a sense of gratitude for what you have.
Mhm.
There's a very simple exercise, which is the gratitude diary, which is before you go to sleep each night, you just jot down one thing for which you've got a sense of gratitude, whether it's your friend, your family, your health, your job, the part of the world you happen to live in, whatever it is. Because often those things vanish from our lives. If we're healthy, we forget we're healthy until we become unhealthy. Or, if we have good friends, we forget that until one of them passes away or moves away or whatever it is. So having gratitude for what you've got rather than striving for more is psychologically a very healthy way of looking at life. So I'd say it's one. The
Mhm.
other is, and this falls out of a lot of research now, that when we spend our money on goods, on physical things, yes, it makes us happy for a very short period of time. When we spend it on experiences, then actually it extends happiness and contentment. And the reason for that is that experiences normally are undertaken with other people, and it gives us something to talk about with other people. Goods often just make our friends and family rather jealous of us, and they fade quite quickly. So unusual or just exciting or interesting experiences gives you conversational currency, allows you to connect with others. And connecting with others is absolutely central to happiness and contentment. And we forget that again. It's that one of those common sense things where you think, oh, if I just had a bigger car or a bigger house or whatever it is, that is not the road forward. So I think those two things coming out of the book would be key.
That's nice. Talking 2 seconds about the boredom that we were talking about at the beginning. One of the things I relate a lot to what you said is the creativity kicks in only when you're bored. And you're right, in we tend to fill in the gaps in the space. We don't want to be bored, so we constantly scroll on the mobile or the computer or whatever. So we try to do something because we are trained. Our brain now is trained to keep busy, keep busy. However, when we are in the shower, we can't be with our mobile or anything else, and the
Yes.
shower is the only moment probably when you can actually think and become creative a little bit more. So that again brought me back to the moment when I thought boredom is actually good because it kicks the creativity. So yeah, I just wanted to add on what you just said there.
Yeah, I think that's right. Walking seems to makes people a little bit more creative, and also seeing the bigger picture. One of the things I do talk about in 59 is writing your own eulogy for your funeral. What do you want people to say about you, and are you heading in that direction? And I think that's a very helpful exercise. For all of us, life will be over sooner than perhaps we imagine. And so thinking, am I achieving what I want people to say at that funeral is a little bit morbid, but actually a rather helpful enterprise. And often that is related to creativity because sometimes it's in those moments when you go, what am I doing? I'm chasing after this thing, and it's just making me ill or anxious or whatever. Maybe there are other ways of spending my life.
Yeah, yeah. Last two questions for this interview. Now, one is, what books would you recommend to people?
Well, in terms of psychology, the person I always go to is Dale Carnegie, which is How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I think, I mean, it's an old book now, and so there are some issues with some of the language in it, but still, Carnegie was a brilliant writer, and some of the ideas are very simple. There is a misreading of Carnegie, which is about, oh, it's about manipulating other people, when in fact, actually, it's about sincerity. And I think that's very important. So that one's very good. How to Stop Worrying and Start Living is extremely good as well. So I think I would go to those two books. He is a brilliant writer, brilliant speaker. And I think as a kid, that's what I thought psychology would be. It isn't, but that's what I thought psychology would be. So that's what my recommendations would be.
All right, so not because the psychology university was just around the corner, because I've read that one on the internet. So you chose that. No, jokes aside, yeah, Dale Carnegie is absolutely brilliant. Those books are a keystone for living a life that is actually genuine and transparent
Yes.
rather
Yeah.
than constructed. But yes, last question is. So we have a lot of listeners here, and if you had to leave our viewers, our audience, with one practical challenge, they could try this week, for example, to be happier in life or more effective, what would that be?
Oh, I think it would be the same challenge that I tend to give to kids when I speak to them in schools, which is it works better for as people who are used to books because it involves books, which actually I now realize that kids don't read very much. But if you're on a desert island and you're on your own in the desert island and you're allowed one stack of books about any topic, it can't be how to live on the desert island, but anything else, one stack of books. What would the topic of that one stack of books be? Because that probably is your passion. It's probably the thing that you're actually most interested in when it all comes to be. And if you can figure out a way of making a living off of that passion, and you don't need to make a good living, you just need to get along, you probably got a recipe for contentment and happiness. And I think as we get older, we forget that passion sometimes. It's the thing that will cause you to spend longer working on a particular topic. Time will fly. You will have a good time. You will meet like-minded people and have meaningful conversations with them and build a community around that. And we often forget that. It often then becomes just about having a job and so on. But I think aiming for trying to incorporate your passion in your life, you don't need to make a good living, you do need to make a living. That to me is a recipe for success.
Oh, I know I said the last question, but I'm intrigued by this because passion is one of my, I'm interested in this because I've changed career completely from a university lecturer
Mm,
doing something completely different, went into property business, something completely different, wasn't related to what I studied for many years. And the very first university that I chose was something related with agriculture, and I wasn't passionate about. And if you ask me, why did you choose it then? Because I thought I could get a job, a better chance to get a job through that university. But I didn't enjoy it. I hated it, and then I left. Now, how can you how can you teach, not teach, but how can you inspire, young people that are, just coming out of the school, they need to choose a university career or whatever career path to follow their passion? Because most of the times when you say that, they don't get it, or the parents don't get it because they say, no,
Mm.
you need to focus on the money. So how can you do that?
Well, I think it's basically saying you can focus on the money if you like, but how much money do you actually need? Because it may be far less in a frugal lifestyle than you think you need.
Mhm.
And if you focus on money, there's quite a lot of evidence to show actually it's not the route to happiness. So, do you want your children to be happy or not? And if you do, then they need to be able to bring in some income. But actually, happiness is normally building on that sense of passion, mainly from that community perspective. They'll start to surround themselves, and those other people offer opportunities and resilience and so on. So I always say to parents, if you really do care about your children, and most of them do, then stop pushing them into what might be quite well paid occupations, because I will guarantee you now it's not a route to happiness. The happiest people I know aren't the ones with the biggest income, they're the ones doing what they love.
Yeah, there's no relationship. You could have both. You can have passion and profit at the same time.
Yes, yeah,
It
of
doesn't
course.
make any, they're not mutually exclusive. So that's important to know. Right. Richard, thank you so much for this. There are so many golden nuggets we're going to share, with our audience here. Thank you very much, and I really look forward to seeing your next project. Hopefully, even if it's not a book, but if it's a show or a magic show, I will be there.
Wonderful. Okay, thanks for your time. Bye bye.
Thank you so much. Bye. Bye.